I'm not actually against C-sections, so just want to make that really clear. I should have made that clear in the very beginning. I want to just share this, add to the pool of positive natural birth stories and positive birth stories. Hello, welcome back. I've never shared this story before of how our baby girl, our second child, was born, and I thought I have a huge pile of laundry to do. I love these fold laundry with me and chatty videos, and I hope you enjoy it and you will join me. And this is also a new setup with the camera and the microphone, so fingers crossed this will work. And it's also been more than 10 months ago that she was born, but let's just jump in and I'll share the story with you. So my baby girl's name is Mila Rose, and she was due, I think, on the 21st, if I'm not mistaken, and 21st of October, but she came significantly earlier than I expected, so it was still within, normality. She came when I was 38 weeks and 5 days pregnant, and that meant that I thought I will have about 1 or 2 weeks of maternity leave from my self-employment. I just finished that book project that I've been talking about before, and that was for a friend. It was a self-published project, and it was crunch time. Like, it was really difficult to finish that project off with 2 days of, I worked 2 days a week at that point, not even full days. And some things happened in this project, and that's why I was very stressed, and I really was looking forward to this maternity leave, aka not working. And then, surprisingly, she came, but interestingly, the lead up, the way actually this happened. So Mila, as our second one, the pregnancy was actually a really, I would say, relatively easy pregnancy. And everything was going well up to the point where suddenly she was transverse, in a transverse position. And that means that the baby is horizontal. And that was concerning because babies can turn last minute and be born head down. And they can also be born with their feet first, which is not as, people don't really want babies to be born this way ideally, because it can lead to complications, but it's still possible. And I have a friend, for example, who gave birth. Surprisingly, she didn't even know baby was feet first. I don't even remember how this is called anymore. There's a term for it. And I was sharing in a video that I've actually not published yet, which I'm planning to publish from back then, that I'm really concerned that she's in this position, and the midwives are sharing their concern as well, that because she's actually been in this position quite late in the pregnancy. And what happened was that in my pregnancy yoga class, I had the recommendation to try spinning babies. And we've actually tried this kind of, I think it's called Big Turning Day. So I bought this video. It was not very expensive. You don't even necessarily need to buy these instructions. And for a transverse position. And we did these exercises for 1 day. They were quite funny exercises, but I think the reason what I read, what can be why a baby doesn't actually change naturally into the position that they are best suited for birth, is that something happened during pregnancy. For example, what can happen is that you maybe had an accident and that there's a tightening in your muscles, and that's why, although the baby would want to go into this position, it chooses this position because that's the most comfortable that it can possibly get into. As I'm not a medical professional, and please don't take this as medical advice. This whole story is my personal experience. But I decided, instead of having a manual, because sometimes they're trying to manually reposition a baby, I wanted to try to allow her, and believe that she would be in the right position, head down, if she could, and there might be a reason why she can't. So it's my responsibility to sort this out. And by doing these exercises, trying to loosen this area here, like the hips and like basic different things, trying to allow this room for her to actually go into the right position. And I wasn't, I was prepared to potentially have a C-section if things aren't working out, which was disappointing because my first birth was a completely natural birth, which I might share at some point, but basically it was an almost pain-free second stage labor. And it was, no medication whatsoever. And I was even told I could have a home birth if I wanted to, which I still was a bit afraid of to have a home birth, because I want to have just, as a safety backup for in case something does go wrong. I'd rather be in the birth center, which is connected to the hospital. But basically, we actually managed to then turn her around by doing these exercises. I believe that's what actually made the difference. And she then actually went into the right birthing position a week or so after, or a few days. You can actually tell when this is happening. So I'd say for me, this has definitely worked. So if you know someone who has a baby in a transverse position, I'd recommend maybe looking at this, looking at spinning babies. And I'll link that below. But again, no medical advice, it's up to you. You need to make the choices that are right for you. And that worked for us. And that was such a big relief, because that means I could have the opportunity to have another natural birth if everything was going well. And that was, really a huge blessing. And so the week before, or even like a month before with this pregnancy, I had a lot of Braxton Hicks contractions. That's also called practice contractions. But I could really feel them. But I wasn't concerned, because I knew that, it wasn't the right time yet. As this was no shadow of a doubt that this is just my body preparing for birth. And however, the days leading up to her birth, although it was still quite early, they started to become more frequent. Still not to the point where I was like, this is full-on labor. But to the point where I was like, okay, I can really feel this now. And it's not just a little tightening here or tightening there. So I started to feel like, phew, I can feel this. And it was actually my husband's birthday on the 11th of October. And we celebrated at his parents', with his family. And that night, it kind of started to feel a bit more intense and more frequent. And I was like, this is strange. But I still didn't believe that this is actually going to happen. And I just see my battery is flashing, so I'll quickly change the battery and I'll get back to you. So basically, we were preparing to drive home his birthday party, and it starts to feel a bit more intense. And I jokingly tell his parents, if you receive a phone call at night, you know what happened. But I actually wasn't particularly serious. It was more jokingly. And that same day, actually, or a few days before this day, Leo, our firstborn, our son, he started waking up at 2 a.m. for we don't know why, and didn't go to bed for 6-7 hours. So it was very, very, very tiring the few days before. And I was actually crying because it was just so difficult to manage my energies, and being so highly pregnant, and having a toddler that doesn't sleep. And we had no problems before, and afterwards also things went better, but these were the few days before she came. Suddenly he started doing this. Maybe he could feel she was coming, I don't know. But that unfortunately happened also the night I started to go into labor. So we came home from his parents, put him to bed, and he woke up at 2 a.m. again. And we were very, very knackered. And again, he didn't go back to sleep. And at 4 a.m., so 2 hours after that, I started to go into labor, and I knew this was actually happening, because with Leo, because of the way I prepare for birth with Leo and also for this baby, Nick and I are using the Bradley method, which I can link some videos below, which I think it's an amazing method if you are wanting to have a natural birth and you want to prepare for this. It's something you should definitely prepare for months ahead and not just on the birth. But it's still, it's good to know these things. It's a book that I highly recommend. We didn't even do the full course. I couldn't find a course on the Bradley method, and in a person course for in the UK. So we just used the book and we practiced with the book, and practice is really important. And I'll link another video from where I actually learned about this method. And it's called, it's husband-led or husband-coached childbirth. And Nick was really crucial in this birth, in both births actually. And so grateful that we managed to have the birth before the whole COVID lockdown thing and after. So my heart goes out to all the mamas who were not able to have a birth partner during their birth and wanted one and couldn't because of the COVID restrictions. So I can imagine it must have been very scary and difficult, especially if it's your first child. And I would just want to say to you that, you did your best, whatever happened during that birth. And having support from someone you know and love is, I think, so special and valuable. And so I'm so grateful that Nick and I were both on board with this birthing method. And especially because it's husband or partner coached childbirth, you ideally would prepare together and know what's happening. And so I went into labor and I knew that it was because it was so close. Suddenly my contractions were, from going, being like, this hurts a bit. It's basically like, period pain. That's how it feels initially for me. And I'm just checking my contraction timer because I had to actually download this again. And so at 4:14, I started already to time my contractions. And it was already 1 minute and 2 seconds long, the whole contraction. And it was a strong, very strong contraction. So I knew, okay, we're going to labor. Then about 12 minutes later, I already had another one that was longer. And then 8 minutes later, another one. And then 9 minutes later, another one that was almost 2 minutes long. And they just kept coming every 7, it was 7, 6, 12, 6, 8, it just kept going all the way until Nick's parents arrived around 6, I think, and Nick called the birth center, which is attached to the hospital where we went to. And he said, yeah, we can come in, but we need to come in soon because there's only one space left in the birth center. And I really wanted to go to the birth center. I wanted to have a midwife-supported birth. And for various reasons that, again, related to the Bradley method. And also the way I wanted to, just kind of be left to my own devices mostly, but having the safety of a hospital or like a medical, support in case things do go wrong. Because birth is, it's a life and death situation, really, like things can happen, and I have a lot of respect for midwives and all other mothers that have gone through this experience. And so compared to Leo's birth, so I'm jumping back and forth, but with Leo, the contractions never, because of the way the Bradley methods works, you have to relax your body fully and let it do its natural thing. So the uterus is the biggest muscle in a woman's body, and what it does when it's having a contraction is basically it contracts. So this is like my biceps, and now it contracts. That's basically what actually in some way happens to your uterus as well. And if you are nervous and start to tense up, you're actually hindering this contraction to happen properly, and you slow down your birth, and it can also become more painful. So that's why actually Bradley methods births can be almost pain-free births, or very doable, very tolerable births. So when I was with my first child, Leo, in labor, I went to the hospital almost too late. I was fully dilated when I arrived at the hospital because I honestly didn't think the contractions were strong enough. I was still kind of comparing it to the things you see on TV, women screaming in pain, and I was just like, this is manageable, not knowing that suddenly I had to go on all fours. I just had this desire and wanted to push at home. Because I was like, well, that's not, I'm just waiting for it to kind of start to get intense. Because they tell you, once they're intense and strong and long, then you should maybe start to consider, going. And, or whatever. I don't fully remember the advice, but whatever advice. I just didn't think it was strong enough, but I was already fully dilated by the time we arrived in the hospital. So clearly my body has done what it needed to do for the baby to come out. And yeah, so this is why I think the Bradley method truly works, because I didn't even think I was as far as I was. It's just, I don't know, it's just crazy to believe that I basically was at home and already started pushing, or wanted to push. I had pushing contractions already. So that was with Leo. With Mila, because of this experience, I knew that I had to go in when it felt strong, but not like, oh, this is intense, I can't stand anymore. I knew that with me, I have to kind of be a bit more sensitive, and when it feels like, oh, this is uncomfortable, to believe this is actually a strong contraction, and this means business is happening. So I actually adjusted my expectations, and basically always said, okay, these are high, strong contractions. And, that's what also Nick communicated with the midwife, because we knew again that with me, either my pain tolerance is very, high, or just because of the way this method works and relaxes your body fully. And you're in a very specific position that you need to practice in the way you lie down. And my contractions were coming on quite quickly, and I knew, okay, we need to go now, because otherwise we have the same scenario, and I don't want to have that again necessarily, to waddle to the ward and already pushing, basically. It was fine, everything worked out well, we had a wonderful birth, but yeah, so we went earlier and we called them again when we left, and they confirmed again that there's still one place free in the birth center, but it's pretty busy, and if we don't make it in time, or if someone else comes first, then we have to go to the center of Manchester, which would have been obviously getting towards rush hour time. And I really didn't want to do that, because I didn't know that hospital. Didn't know where it was, and I'm a person who likes to have things planned out. So I knew that hospital from before we gave birth, from the first birth. So I wanted to give birth there, and I wanted to give birth in that birth center. And we managed to get a room there. We arrived, the midwife checked me out. I was 4 centimeters dilated, but I knew the only thing that really matters about this is that they will keep me in the hospital now, and I have my room secured, so to speak. But I know that the level of dilation doesn't tell you very much, in the sense of how it progresses. You can fully dilate in an hour from, a really low number to a high number. And I knew from this book again that this is, whatever they say now, it doesn't really matter as long as it means I can stay. And I could stay. So I had my room, and then the contractions really slowed down to the point where I was like, whoops, maybe did we come too early? I started doubting myself, and and I actually fell asleep, because obviously we have been up since 2 a.m., and the previous nights have also been really crazy and tiring. And sorry, I should have mentioned that Nick's parents, in case I didn't, they came to watch our toddler. And yeah, I think they're actually arriving now, so I should probably progress with my storytelling so it's not too long. But basically, so we arrived, contractions slowed down, which again, I knew we were expecting this to happen, because again, I knew from this Bradley method, I love this book, by the way, read it. They came back from grocery shopping. That, stress slows down labor, and that's a very natural process, and that's good, so I was expecting that, but it came down to the point where I was like, I actually fell asleep, because there was such a long gap in between, so which was good, because I think my body needed that. But I think also the midwives were like, maybe after I woke up, maybe you should start getting up, and I was very disappointed, because I thought, okay, well, my labor has slowed down to a point where I was like, well, can I even justify taking up this space in this birth center? And again, so many doubts. And then I remembered that the person I learned about the Bradley method Lisa Bass from Farmhouse on Boone, which is also a YouTube channel, which again I will link down below. She's a really wonderful person. She had a similar situation with one of her later children, that labor also suddenly slowed down to a point of almost stopping. Yeah, the family is back, toddler is back, baby is still asleep. I see her on the monitor. Where were we? Sorry for interruptions, but yeah, I'm just going to finish the story. So basically, my labor slowed down to a point where I started to get recommendations of maybe I should, go for a walk or something. But again, from this previous YouTuber that I just mentioned, Lisa, I knew even in the Bradley method, it can happen that your labor kind of slows down to a point where, your contractions don't keep coming. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try what she tried. And that was something that her midwife recommended during one of her home births, which was using the Miles circuit, which again, no medical advice, but in my experience, this really helped, because that's like a series of exercises to help move your hips and get the baby, I guess, into a better position, and so the labor can progress. So for us, it kind of slowed down to a point where I was like, okay, this is not happening. And so I basically, one of them, there's like different positions, and in one I was already in through this, birth method. Hey, sweetie. And it was like to sit on, like to destabilize your hips, basically, like to move them like this. And I sat on a birth ball, or like a gym ball, and I moved my hips around like this, it's like that, on the ball. And it said that if you do start to have contractions, you should just keep going for about half an hour, I think, if I remember correctly. Hi. And again, I linked that website down below. Hey, sweetie. And that really, really helped. Wow, yeah. That's my camera. Have you seen that before? No, I don't know if you have seen that before. Basically, my labor started to come within 15 minutes, or like really quickly.
It's the camera.
Yeah, camera. Leo, can you come here, please, sweetie? Can you sit with me here? I have a cameraman. Leo, you have to sit here so you can see it. You should see it. It's just so cute what he's looking behind the camera. It's my camera.
It's my baby camera.
Cheese. Click. Nice one. Thank you. So contractions started to come on really, really quickly, and then they were full on. Whoopsie, Leo. Leo is still behind the camera. And yeah, from that moment I knew that I had to lie down again, because they were starting to get really strong. And that's why I had to do my full-on relaxation. Basically, you have to relax your full body, like all muscles in your body. And even up to your head. Sweetie, are you just sitting behind the camera now? So now we have here the person in question, or the one that is the story about. She woke up. And Leo was playing a bit too much with the camera, and yeah, we were deciding to split parenting duties, and so basically contractions started speeding up, and they were starting to come on top of each other. So that is when I knew that this is happening now. We're going into the pushing contractions soon. This is transition time, and for this, I was lying down on this sofa bed-ish thing that they have in this birth center, and I had to fully relax. So to the point where if you have even a small, ring, if you scrunch up your face, then that means that you are still not fully relaxed. And yeah, you're telling your story too. Yeah, it was quite amazing. You were so close to coming then, and that is also the point where you, ideally, when you do it well, you should look like you're sleeping. But that was the most intense contractions that I have had throughout this whole labor. And obviously we kind of notified the midwives that we think it's close. So two midwives came in. But they were still not really taking me seriously, because it's like, she's just kind of sleeping, and they didn't realize I was having my most intense contractions because I looked so relaxed. So this again is a testament to this method. She wants to stand on my lap. You don't want to sit anymore. It was a testament to this method that, you know, you look so relaxed as if you would be sleeping, but I was having, like I said, it was, I wouldn't say painful, but, you know, like that's maybe the most painful it was. So it was definitely intense, and I could really had to work through this. There's nothing else you can really think about at that point. Mila's playing with the things on the floor. Just to finish this, it's almost over. So again, they didn't even believe I was in labor, but anyway, I mean, in the final stages of labor. And then I was like, okay, I need to go to the toilet. And they're like, yeah, it's okay, you know, just relax, go to the toilet, you know, get ready. And I was like, I think I need to get changed. They were still not really fully understanding that I was like, I think I'm giving birth now. So I went to get changed in the toilet and then came out. And my plan was to, same with Leo, that I would give birth on all fours, because that's a very good pushing position. And that's what I wanted, but I didn't even make it there. I made a few steps out of the bathroom, held onto the birth tap, and I couldn't move anymore. I knew that this was happening now. And that's when it became serious. And they realized, she's pushing, this is happening. And with Leo, I was actually, this is one of the mistakes I remember making, that I was too scared to go into a squatting position with Leo. So I actually kind of felt like I was prolonging my pushing stage for a long time. I was pushing for 3 hours, to the point where the midwife was saying like, you know, maybe we should try a different position. But with Mila, it was very different. So I was standing, I couldn't actually even, the idea of going even just a few steps further and moving to the ground was like out of the question. I didn't want to move anymore. So I was standing and I knew this is happening right now. So this was a very quick transition from nothing was happening. I was, you know, thinking I was, you know, falling asleep for real. That was the real thing. Doing the Miles circuit, within, you know, getting contractions really quickly, within 15 minutes, half an hour, I already had to lie down, I think, and go through these really intense contractions, relaxing fully with Nick's coaching, probably like 10 minutes or 20 minutes. It was really quick. And going to the bathroom and then already being pushing at the tub. And I think within a few minutes, I already knew that she was crowning, and then I could already hear her cry. So that was a few minutes, that was not 3 hours, my pushing stage. It was a few minutes, within a few pushes, her head was out, she was crying. I was like, oh my goodness, what's happening? This is, because I was not prepared for this. She's playing with the lamp. Mimi, it's a bit loud, sweetie. Do you want to play with the basket? So she was crying, her head was already out, she was crying, still, body was still in. And I was like, oh my goodness, I want her out. But I didn't have a contraction, and I had a final contraction and a final push, and she was out. And with Leo, I was able to catch him myself. They said, be ready to catch your baby. And I was like, what? So I caught him myself and put him onto my breast, onto my chest as soon as he was born. And that's what I was expecting to happen with Mila too, you know, giving birth in a squatting position, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't happen because I was standing. The midwives actually caught her and then gave her immediately to me. And I was just, there was no screaming. I think I was just nervous and you know, because it was such an intense kind of experience. But it was so short. It was like 5 minutes, I don't know, not longer than that. So my total labor starting at 4 a.m., that's when I started to think, okay, this is for real. She was born at 2 minutes to 1 p.m. So it was a very short, this is considered a quick labor actually with Leo, because of my long pushing stage. I think the whole labor was 13, 14 hours, something like this. And that's different stages of labor. You know, it's not always just a full-on contractions or full-on pushing. You go through stages in labor, and I think that's why this book is so educational. It shows you what signs to look out for, and even then things change. And then she was here, and it was so wonderful. I could then give birth to the placenta a little bit later. I could breastfeed her, and because we had a very difficult start with Leo with breastfeeding. It was horrible. I've had so much pain, and it was close to stopping. And then we pushed through with expressing and feeding at the same time, to the point where he was actually fed while she was born. You know, during that time he was still feeding in the night. So we managed to push through to that difficult initial period. But with her, I knew I wanted to have a better start. So I actually researched a method that's called the Thompson method, I think. And again, I will link that below. And again, I'm not a medical professional, but that's a very experienced midwife. And she teaches that the way breastfeeding experts in the hospital and the midwives tell you to breastfeed is actually ruining your nipples. And that's what then causes people to stop breastfeeding because there's so much pain and they're bleeding and have cracked nipples. And using that method, I actually only watched one video, and I will again link that below. And that transformed the way I fed. And the midwives, because I knew that I was not going to listen to what they suggested for breastfeeding. I was going to listen to that more experienced midwife that did, a doctorate on breastfeeding, exactly on how to prevent that nipple trauma. That's how it's called. And I knew that I wanted to have a different start for my breastfeeding with Mila. And yeah, I've had no pain. She latched immediately. It was absolutely no problem. Again, I had no medication. I had no gas and air. I had no medical interference with drugs in this birth. And that's why, and her vitals were good, my vitals were good. I didn't tear like I did with Leo. Unfortunately, with Leo, I had second degree tear because he came out with his hand like this on his head. Otherwise, they said I would probably have not had any tearing either. And so with her, no problem. And she latched on easily. They were constantly commenting how she was always feeding, and they were surprised. So I think that again shows you that there's something not quite right in the medical system, the way breastfeeding is taught. That so many mothers are struggling, that so many mothers have nipple trauma, that so many mothers are stopping. I'm not saying that you should breastfeed. That's your own decision, and I think everyone should choose that path, and because it's a commitment. It is a commitment, and it can be a burden for the mother. It's a physical. It's physically demanding because you nourish a child for much more than pregnancy. You have to be very careful with what you eat. To basically, it still affects your lifestyle significantly. But I was willing to make that sacrifice, and I was willing to continue doing that for the benefits of breastfeeding. But basically, I want to say that she's a testament to that feeding is possible without pain. And I would highly recommend, even if this is not your first one, or your first one was a very difficult journey, or you never managed to breastfeed, I would recommend you looking at this method. Often it's on sale. It's not very expensive for what it gives you. The amount of formula you've saved yourself from having to buy by being able to breastfeed, I think, pays off for that thing. And also the rewarding feeling of you actually made it if you wanted to. So I again linked that below. So these are the things that I did differently to Leo's birth. With Leo, I was not prepared. I thought breastfeeding is going to be super easy. That's just a natural thing, right? I've only prepared for birth, and oh my goodness, I think my postpartum was much harder than my birth. The cart was full and had to sort out things. I know this is a long video, but I feel like I'm so passionate about this topic and I want to share this so much. So I just want to say I'm very grateful that I've had the births I've had. I don't take them for granted. There were many decisions I've had to make throughout the course that could have easily turned that into a very highly medicalized birth, aka I would have had to maybe had an epidural or maybe a C-section. And there are times I'm not actually against C-sections, so I just want to make that really clear. I should have made that clear in the very beginning, that I think C-sections are a wonderful tool to save mothers and babies who really need it. There are medical cases where this is the only way to save both, and I think this is very crucial. But the thing that Bradley Method mentions is there are a lot of things that happen in the preparation leading up to birth that could actually lead to a C-section that wasn't necessarily necessary, and you can read up on that. But so a C-section is a major surgery that you have to recover from, and I wanted to, if I can, if it's not medically necessary, prevent that from happening. And that's why I had to make certain choices throughout Leo's pregnancy and also throughout Mila's pregnancy that led to this choice. And I think information and informing yourself and obviously preparing yourself physically are all really crucial factors. And don't be disappointed if it didn't work for you one time, and if you have the person I actually learned this from, who recommended this method, her first birth was nothing like that, no natural birth, lots of medical intervention. But then she decided she wants to do this differently, and then she learned about this method, informed herself and practiced. And since then she only had natural births. And I think that is a testament that even if this one birth or all the births you've had so far were like this, it's still possible. But obviously, your medical situation is different, every birth is different. Informing yourself and, taking responsibility for your birth and for your life, that's what I want to actually propose. And please, again, this is not medical advice. I am not a medical professional, although I do want to inform myself as much as I can. This was my experience. I ask you to do your due diligence and your research and always check with your medical professional, but this is possible, and I want to just share this, add to the pool of positive natural birth stories and positive birth stories. Birth can be a wonderful experience. Yes, it is scary sometimes because you don't know what's going to happen, things can change, but you can do your best to prepare for it, and then you just have to open yourself up to what this experience will bring to you. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for, listening to this long story. And again, I will link all the things I mentioned in the description below. And I think toddler is hungry, baby wants to have attention. But again, thank you so much for listening and watching. And normally I make motherhood related videos, but more illustration related videos. So picture book related content. And yeah, I can tell the household is starting to need attention now, so I will end it here. But thank you for watching. Please watch my other videos that I've posted on my creative journey as a mother and illustrator. And so nice to have you around. Subscribe, put a notification bell on all, and please like this video if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.